So I'll try and see if I can make this interesting for you all. I'll talk for 20-25 minutes, which will turn into more like half an hour at the very least, and then if anyone wants to, feel free to jump in and interrupt as I'm going through, but then I'll just stop and you can ask questions whenever you want to. So, this is my question. Is this okay? Is this as good as it gets? We're living in a society, and I need to chuck out a couple of facts here, which I don't think people understand. I was talking to a disabled group this morning. Do you know that Britain has the highest level of poverty among the disabled in Europe? Not Greece, not Spain, not Italy, Britain. Highest level of inequality other than Russia, Turkey and the US. This is the only way we can become a more unequal society, is to turn it to Turkey, Russia or the US. This can't be as good as it gets. Surely it's not as good as it gets. What do you think people earn in Scotland? Because I've been doing this all over the place. Nobody gets this right. The average salary in Scotland is £24,000. The median salary in Scotland, half of the population earning less than this, is 21,000. Now, when I come to talk to people and I say, what's a decent salary? What would you call a decent salary that you can live on these days? And people say, oh, you know, 25,000 to 35,000. You can pay your bills. You can shop. You're not going to be in massive debt if you look after your money. You're not going to be permanently worried about economic security. 25,000 to 35,000. You're not rich. You're not buying overseas properties. You're certainly not a tax consultant. That seems like a reasonable number. Of the people who are working in Scotland, the ones with jobs, only 1 in 5 working Scots earns between £25,000 and £35,000. 3 out of 5 working Scots don't even earn that. 1 in 5 earn more than that. And very quickly, of course, that ramps right up to earning a hell of a lot more than that. Now, if we've got people in this country who are all working, and I mean, I forget the Tories, I don't even want to hear their bleating voices in my ears, because there's a hell of a lot of us that are working hard, and we're not getting on, and we're not striving, and we're not successful, because they're completely on. In fact, I'm going to quote some here. I was watching, catching up on all the episodes of Waking the Dead, and DCI Boyd, who I greatly enjoy simply for his rudeness, is interviewing a guy who's an immigrant. And he's been here for 6 or 7 years and he's driving a BMW. And he says to him, where'd you get your money from? And he says, I came to this country and I worked hard. And he says, now I know you're lying, because nobody in Britain got rich from working hard. And that's true. This country is not a country where you get rich by working hard. This country is a country where you work hard for your whole life and you get through in tax credits. It's not good enough. Now what's the problem with that? If we've all got jobs and we're not in the brew, is that no fine? Well, no, it's absolutely not, for this one simple reason. The only way that half our population gets by, makes it through the week, is benefits. Benefits keeps us going. And the cheek of it is that somebody tells you that these benefits are a benefit for the people on the benefits. They're not. These benefits are benefits for those employers that don't pay a wage to let you get through the week. I mean, it really is that simple. The idea that these neoliberal market economists tell you is that the market will fix everything because the market's always right. Well, the market can't be employing people in salaries they can't survive on. They would die, they would starve, it wouldn't be possible. In their theory of the markets would correct to pay them enough money. In reality, Gordon Brown says, I tell you what, you keep paying the poverty wages, we'll give them a wee bung on the side. We'll then make them feel guilty about it, because it's not a bung to them, it's a bung to the employers. We'll make them feel guilty about it, and then we'll start to complain about how our public finances aren't any good. So we put a paper out last week or the week before, I forget. You check it out on the website. We're answering the question, you want a good society, you need to pay for it. We do need to pay for it. So, is it unachievable? Is it beyond us? Well, here's a simple measure that just puts it into perspective. See if we took our labour market, and we got the number of people into work that they have in an average Nordic country. And we then got the pay to be distributed in the way that they do in an average Nordic country. The spread of income, reduced inequality, so the spread of income is the same as those Nordic countries. And you remodel our income tax, without touching tax rates, without raising tax rates at all, we would generate £4 billion extra in tax revenue, just because the best way to make your taxes good is to take a larger proportion of your national wealth in wages. People pay taxes, corporations dodge taxes. So, the way to get a situation where we've got the taxes that'll work, that'll pay for the society that we want, isn't just to ramp up taxes, and it isn't to worry and fret and cut back the services so that we've got the money. It's to stop having a low-pay society. And it's that simple. That's the Common Weal story in a nutshell. It is really that simple. If you can create a decent economy, and my God, we do not even have a sniff at a decent economy. If you can create a decent economy, it'll create good jobs. Good jobs make people wealthy. Wealthy people pay their taxes. Decent taxes make strong public finances. Then you can afford the public services that create strong social cohesion. And that's what you want. That's what you want. You want a society with strong social cohesion. Because one of the things that the Common Weal project is very keen to do is to say, this is not a Cameron, Britain, us and them thing. It's not a Thatcher us and them thing. It's not even that playwright us and them thing. We've got to stop talking about Scotland's future and us against them. We're a wee country of 5 million people. It's all of us. All of us. And that's one of the messages that I'm very keen to get across. Because to be honest, a lot of the stuff, which if you come down to, we are a think tank. We are an academic think tank. I deal with a board of top-flight academics who make sure that everything that we put out is absolutely rigorous, which is why I'm going grey. But that's important, because we're coming from the left, and if I tell people this is what we want to have for our nation, you know we're going to get shot at, which is why, unlike some of the right-wing think tanks, everything that we do has got to be absolutely solidly backed up all the way through, so we make sure that we always do that. But that means that, of course, we're dealing in complex economics. Why is the public sector counter-cyclical? I'll come back to that. This is not always easy to explain to people, because to be quite honest, our grasp of economics isn't brilliant. So how do we find a way to phrase this? And this is what I really want to get across about Common Weal. This is the overwhelming thing. There are different philosophies via which you can live your life and you can run your nation. We've got Britain. Britain's only got the one philosophy. And Britain's philosophy is conflict. Whoever is strongest must be best. Whoever can win at whatever cost must be the best person. Cherish the wealth creators. You heard that one? Cherish the wealth creators, because they're the people that create our wealth. Are they? They're the people that are stitching push-up bras in China. Because that's where the value in our economy is created. And this is an important thing. The value is created by the people that take thread and make it into cloth. And then by the people that take cloth and make it into clothes. The important question is, where is it realised? Because they ship it over here. And they realise the profit over here. And how did they realise the profit? By whoever it is that drives those goods to the depot. And it takes it from the depot to the shops. And gets up in the morning and stacks the shelves and sells those goods onwards. That's who realises the value. And where did they realise that value from? Our pockets. We're supposed to be glad that the retail economy that we've got creates a few low-paid jobs. Where did they get the money to create these low-paid jobs? It's not coming from outside. They're not bringing money into this country. They're taking it back out again. And that's the reality of the economy that we've got. We've got an economy which is based on two things: fleecing us and a sort of complicated carousel approach to money and economic development. We've created money that's so cheap in this country that all you have to do is make tiny, tiny profits and then borrow it again and make tiny, tiny profits, pay it back, borrow it, make tiny, tiny profits. Our money is so cheap that the last thing a sensible person would want to do is invest it in long-term productive industry, because that can take years to pay off. Why take years when you can gamble it and get the money back in hours, minutes sometimes? So we've got this economy which is predicated on the City of London making a lot of money and keeping the public finances just about surviving through a scam. It's not real productive economic activity. And then, to keep the rest of us in jobs, we get a wee bit of money back from our own pockets in the retail economies that dominate a lot of our towns and communities. Bluntly, half of the country. Now, why is this such a bad thing? Because, as I've started off by saying, everything that flows from that is what you would expect. You have, we're lucky in Scotland. We are genuinely lucky in Scotland. We've got a Scottish Parliament. It helps to keep the worst of it just at bay. You look at, for example, a period when London grew by 35%. The City of London, its economic growth was 35%. And over that same period of time, South Wales grew by 3%. They talk about better together. We're not together. We're not one country as it stands. Britain, and this is a surprise, this is one of the many surprises that I've had as I've been kind of picking this up and learning it and doing the policy work. Britain is now the most geographically unequal country in the developed world. You can argue a little bit about that, we might be second, just possibly third, but that's what we're talking about. The spread of income in this country is so disproportionately biased in favour of one small geographic area that almost everybody's a loser. And that was the big lie. That was the big lie that Thatcher sold us. Me first. If we have me first, it'll help us all. The simple truth is that me first left everyone else coming second. And that's the reality of the economics of what happened. There's an alternative way to do this. It's about talking, once again, about all of us first. Let's put that philosophy back onto the table in certainly Scottish politics, and I hope for the sake of the people of England, one day into British politics, all of us first. Because let's compare and contrast Cherish the Wealth Creators. And I just, quick recap, there are certain people, they are better than us. We know they're better than us because they've got money. Money is the thing that proves that someone's better. So if we can just identify whoever's got the most money, hand the whole country over to them, because they're the best people, we'll get the best outcomes. That's how Britain's been run for 40 years now. Well, certainly 30 years. Since the mid-70s that started to kick off, and Thatcher just nailed it all. Brilliant. Let's compare and let's contrast with a country who can be proud of its social statistics. And it's a whole bunch we can pick, but for this one I'm going to pick Norway, because in the middle of what we call the financial crash, in which Norway shrugs and calls 2009, the Prime Minister of Norway phrased an alternative vision for how to build an economy. His alternative vision was as simple as this: to build more, we must share more. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of heavy economics tonight, which I can do, but I'm going to give you an analogy to give you an idea. Now, this is about efficient distribution of resource over the productive economy. But I'll give you an analogy because it makes a lot easier sense. I don't know if anyone here is nursery school teachers, but if they were, and the aim was to get as much built out the Lego as possible, would your approach be to allow the biggest kid to shove the other kids out of the way and hoard the Lego? Because what we know is that becomes a game about hoarding the Lego. How much Lego can I get? How much Lego can I keep after the other rains? That's what that becomes about, and that's the British economic model. If you want to get something actually built, what would you do with the Lego? You spread it more evenly across the class. Some of them will maybe hoard it, but a lot of them will build something. Now that, in a very sort of loose way, is the idea of a Common Weal model for social and economic development in Scotland. If we can have a more effective distribution of resource across society, it doesn't just have a lot of beneficial social effects. The work, I'm sure you've heard people going on about the work in the spirit level about the impact of equality. Almost every single thing that you want from your society performs better if you have lower levels of inequality. Almost everything. Everything from mental health, general health, economic performance, social cohesion, levels of unemployment, levels of crime. Literally almost anything becomes better if you have more equal society. But this is the remarkable thing. When you have that more equal society, there are all sorts of things that happen that you might not imagine, such as straightforward, roaring economic benefit. So, who are the competitive economies? Low tax Britain. Brilliant place. Low tax the US, yeah, really striving forward. Russia, with its deregulated market. No, none of these countries are really the dominant countries. If you look at a table of who's performing best by the broad measure of economic indicators, guess what? It's the Nordic countries. The Nordic countries by miles. Now, I'm going to describe one example of why their attitude to the economy makes them effective, makes it work. And it's to do with innovation. Now, there's so many indicators in Britain which you can use, which when you see them, you scratch your head. The only country, along with France, of the developed countries, which saw a decrease in industrial production between 1980 and today. I mean, we had a 15% decrease. Germany had a 80% increase. Norway 100% increase, Sweden 50% increase. Almost every other developed country in the world increased its industrial output. We just collapsed. There's so many measures of this. But one that's really important is innovation. Because for a small country like ours, with our level of education, like anything else, you must play to your strengths. That's no stacking shelves, just in case it was occurring to anybody. That's thinking about things in a better way and creating new products and new services which are better than the ones that we had. Good old-fashioned industrial production. Now, innovation in industry, that's all white coats and laboratories, right? Because that's what we know what innovation is, because we've got lots of it in Scotland. And we don't. In Sweden, they spend about 6% of GDP in research and development. The UK spends about 1.2%. Scotland spends about 0.6%. We are about tenfold behind Sweden. So no, we're not good innovators. But it's worse than that, because when you look at a map of innovation, and you can do this, I can show you the map. Map of Norway, a map of Britain, and it's blue is low innovation, red's high innovation. Britain is basically a blue country with a red dot in London. Norway is a red country. There's a blue gap in the middle, and when I inquired, it turns out those are mountains. Nobody lives there. The mountain sheep do not innovate all that much. But the rest of the country is solidly innovative. And what's the difference? Let me tell you about a business culture difference that I don't think we understand properly. In the Nordic countries, and the Germanic countries, including some of the big German companies, they have a completely different attitude to what a business is and what business success looks like. In this country, we have got the fetishism of Dragon's Den. Oh God, I hate that programme. Dragon's Den, how quickly can I pick some fatuous idea to make money and sell my enterprise? It's a sawtooth. Build an enterprise up, sell it to equity. Build an enterprise, a new one up, sell it to equity. Once you've got enough money, stop building anything. Just buy other companies, restructure them, package them, sell them on, make a profit. Buy another bunch of companies, strip them, sell them on, etc., etc. That's Britain, sawtooth Britain. And that's what we call economic success. Oh dear God. In Germany, economic success is the state that you hand your company on to the next generation. And that's how they believe it seriously. Now, there's a stand-up company in Germany called the Mittelstand. This is, we would call them big, but they're mid-sized manufacturing companies. You're talking 500,000, 2,000, 3,000 employees. You'll be familiar with Mittelstand companies. So for example, anyone that's got one of those Kärcher pressure washers. Kärcher's a Mittelstand company. If you go to Kärcher, there's a couple of things that you'll find are quite surprising. One, you don't have to fight over this. Nobody has to struggle for it. It's assumed that it's beneficial to have employee directors. The staff, the employees, nominate people to sit on the board of directors who govern the company. And that's great. But I tell you what's really great, and I think this is wonderful. They commit themselves to an economy, a local economy. They have community directors. Their local community have people appointed to the board of directors of Kärcher to help them run their company. Now, one of the banes of our life in Scotland is equity seal. It is a real problem. Every time we get an enterprise that's half decent, that's worth growing, that's worth holding on to, every time that happens, it gets bought and it gets exported. I was sitting in West Calder a couple of weeks ago talking in another meeting, not dissimilar to this one, and I was just talking about one case study, and I don't know in here who else has got wears contact lenses. Back before I had a 4-year-old, where I used to go for a drink occasionally on a Saturday night, one of the greatest inventions that ever was the one-day disposable contact lens. Nae mair fun in the house, contact lenses and put them away. They are now the global standard for contact lenses. They were invented in Scotland by a Scottish company using £300,000 of public money and £100,000 of equity from the company, from the owner of the company itself. They developed contact lenses that you could throw away. They were employing 1,000 people. When suddenly someone says, yeah, this one works now, we'll buy it. There's a hell of a lot more than 1,000 people working now. Unfortunately, it's in Vermont, in the US. They were bought over by a large pharma company. Now, I was talking to the people in West Calder, Livingston, about this. And the thing that came through really nicely was, how many times has it happened? Livingston is a town which has rescued itself a dozen times in the last 30 years. And I'll just tell you this point blank. If you've got to rescue yourselves a dozen times in 30 years, there's something fundamentally wrong. The problem that we've got, in large part, is that the British capitalist system doesn't give a monkeys about ownership at all. They don't care who owns, they don't care how it's owned. It doesn't matter. As long as somebody's getting rich, it's working. We have to change our attitude to this. We've got to stop focusing on inward investment, because far too much of the inward investment is low pay, low productivity inward investment. We've got to stop hoping that somebody's going to come over the hill and rescue us by flying in with the jobs that we hope or we think we deserve. We've got to build them ourselves, and we've got to keep them ourselves. One of the great things about employee directors, community directors, they don't sell their enterprise. A one-off 10% bung doesn't persuade them to destroy their town. How many towns across Scotland have got a big empty employer who they wish to God had come back? We can keep them. We can keep them and we can build them. Once you've got that attitude, if anyone spotted that, I completely forgot to finish the story about innovation. Once you've got that attitude, all sorts of things happen in your enterprise, because one of the ways you keep them growing, you keep them building, is to keep them moving. Innovation in Norway is almost all, by its spread, is almost all employee innovation. What you get in Norway is two folk working in a factory, and they're standing there saying, you know, this conveyor belt, see if we just turned it round the other direction, we could get 4 years of this, we'd double our productivity. So what do? They put it together as a proposal, they hand it to their employee director, who takes it to the board, and the director of the company says, well, that's a cracking idea, you're absolutely right, let's do that, let's innovate how we do our operation. In Britain, it's 2 kids at minimum wage, we need training, standing on a conveyor belt, they're no morons, and they'll say, you know, if we turn this conveyor belt round the other way, we get 4 years round it, twice as much done. But you know that dick is paying us minimum wage? Forget it. There's an entire problem with the attitude to business. We haven't engaged people in the companies they work for. Work is just something that you have to do to become, to survive. It's not something that you feel yourself part of. It's not something you feel yourself involved in. And that business of all of us first, all of us working together to improve whatever it is, our business, our community, our town, our life, our society, that attitude isn't there anymore because we haven't created the structures that will enable it to be there. So this idea of a serious reform of the economy, and anyone who thinks one of these parachuting businesses in, well, no it's not, because there's another Norway example that I'd like to use. Norway, in the 1970s, their logging industry was big men, lumberjack shirts chopped down trees, much like ours was. They now have one of the most advanced materials industries in the whole world. They can make beams of laminated wood, which are almost as strong as steel. The Norwegian timber industry is absolutely fascinating. Here, they're largely still chopping trees doing with axes. We have to think not about rescuing our economy by parachuting in another couple of enterprises in the top. We need to take a fundamental view about what is it that builds an economy. We've got to have finance right. Above all, we've got to get a national investment agency, a national bank for industry in this country, which lends money to enterprises on a straightforward basis. We think you're worth it. We don't think you're going to turn around a profit in 6 months. You're going to build an industry. You're going to build a serious industry. We understand that. 3 years, don't bother paying us the money back, because we think you're a 10-year enterprise. That's the kind of money that we need in Scotland. The banks aren't going to do it. We need a national investment bank. We need to capitalise a national investment bank. In fact, I was talking to an economist and I asked him, what's the biggest challenge for an independent Scotland? Capitalising a national investment bank. If we can do that, we can fix everything else. So, there's some straightforward economic challenges that we can really address right now. Don't put this in the web before the weekend, because I've got a media launch and I don't want anyone to know yet, but I'll tell you what it's saying. We also have to look at our country. A clever society and a clever economy says, right, what are our strengths, what are our assets, and how do we make them work effectively? We have, as we know, some of the most impressive natural resources in Europe, certainly when it comes to renewable energies, but land and a whole bunch of other areas as well. So what are we going to do? Right now, we have a model whereby the national grid is owned by 2 companies who invest as they see fit in our infrastructure, or as they don't see fit, I'll come back to that. We have a whole bunch of other companies like generation that ran down, and a lot of them are doing it on the basis of public wind. I mean, remember, these are our resources. When we give planning permission to a wind farm, we are saying, have our national resource. We just license it. Hardly any of our wind farms are owned by Scottish companies. So we're giving our resources away, just like we did with the North Sea oil. We didn't get anything like Normie's benefit out of it. People say that's because Thatcher wasted it. It's partly because Thatcher wasted it, but it's also because we privatised it and we let the profits go into corporate profits. Norway didn't. Norway kept it for the nation. It was their oil. It was the oil under their feet, and they kept it. We need to do this again. We've got a paper out at the weekend with a straightforward, calm costings, an explanation of how painlessly we can take all of Scotland's energy infrastructure back into collective ownership. Now, if that for a second sounds difficult, I'm going to say it's not. This is the big con of our era. People say to me, oh, you're going to nationalise electricity, how are you going to afford it? No, it doesn't work like that. We're going to pay for this anyway. The electricity companies, you hear them talking about investment. It's not investment. We've got a regulator in this country which allows them to pass all of the cost of their investment onto you. We are paying for this anyway. So the question is, what do we want to pay for? Do we want to pay for multiple phone calls from energy companies trying to fool you into tariffs that you don't understand? Do you want to have an energy manager of the grid in a private company who this week said, in effect, if you don't do precisely what we tell you, we might just turn all the electricity off to your nation? Because that's what the Chief Executive of Scottish Power said. If you mess with our right to set any price that we want, we may not invest in the infrastructure. And that means, because believe me, our infrastructure is decaying, energy needs to be renewed all the time. Our infrastructure is decaying. He is saying, we will sabotage your entire nation. We will leave people in the dark. We will take away regular, fair electricity. And people are saying, like, we always see the better, be careful. No, we shouldn't be careful. I mean, I'm going to say, I use the word very, very rarely, but my God, what is treason these days? This is the national well-being of every man, woman, child in the country. And this guy is standing there saying, well, we might use that as a bargaining chip. We might turn the electricity off just to make sure that we can keep our prices up. Well, this is very straightforward. We'll just take it off them, and it doesn't cost any more than it would to leave it with them. We can do it very straightforwardly. This report will explain there's a straightforward process for doing it. The costings are all there. Here's some surprises that you might find surprising. It'll be at least 20% cheaper because we can borrow money to build infrastructure way cheaper than they can because we're a nation and they're not. So, I mean, substantially cheaper. That's just to build it. Then we can take out the corporate profits, so it will be more than 20%. And even better than that, our model, there were mistakes made when we did nationalisation in the 40s and 50s. The major mistake was we kept everything centralised. It's no good. We can't centralise everything all the time. Centralisation is just asking for corruption. You've got to take things and you've got to move them closer out to where people are. We've got a model of decentralised energy generation. So much of the way that we generate energy in the future is going to be dispersed. Every town, every community, every local authority should be owning its own energy infrastructure. That's how we should develop it. Bond funding through local authorities where democratically you, as the people who own that wind farm, can decide where it goes, how it works, what profit you take from it, how you reinvest that profit. Do you reinvest it in keeping your council tax down? Or do you reinvest it in keeping your electricity bills down? Or do you use it to get some signs? Sorry about 10 minutes late, people are really short of signs at the end of this time. Get a wind farm, invest in some signs. I was in Grangemouth, I was everywhere. I just kept saying town centre, but we're in town. Anyway, this is a model because monopoly enterprises should not be in the hands of private companies. It's like giving a monkey a gun and then asking him to shoot at you. It's our infrastructure. We shouldn't be begging somebody else to let us have access to it. And we need to think about this again and again, different ways of doing things. We've got, and this is another surprise, because this is not everything about Britain, it's just about Britain. You know that Scotland, below national level, we are the least democratic country in the developed world. Not by that much. Not by that much. England's nearly as bad, but even England's better. We are bad by that much. And I can't remember all the figures, but I mean, we've got a local authority area in Scotland which land mass is bigger than Belgium. Who's that local? I live in the central belt. My local authority, I live in Biggar, which is 40 miles outside Edinburgh, which makes Edinburgh closer to me than my local authority, which is in Hamilton. And that's local. We're adopting a child at the moment, and we've got to go to do all the sessions in Hamilton. And they schedule them to give us time to get there from work. Well, I don't know where they think we all work, but I'm 40 miles away from this place. Local in what sense? The town of Kirkcaldy seems to me to be a decent-sized town. Seems to me to be a coherent entity. It's not even got the capacity of its own volition to do anything for itself. Like my wee town of Biggar, there's 3,000, 4,000 of us. We are a coherent community. There's a strong sense of community, a strong sense of what we want from our town. Every one and single one of the 4,000 of us was to collectively vote to put a plaque up on a wall. The sole volition that we've got is to send one councillor, and he's useless, one councillor away to Hamilton to beg the Labour local authority if we could put our plaque up. And quite often they just go, no. And he just comes home, he's a Tory. He just comes home and says, oh no, they didn't let us. That's democracy. We need to democratise. Because one of the things, if I'm going to be philosophical for a second, one of the things which I feel very strongly when people talk about nationalism is, and people say to me, well, I'm not a nationalist, but, and that's very common on the left, I'm not a nationalist, but, well, a couple of things I want to say about that. If you're not a nationalist, what are you? Fascist? An anarchist? An anarcho-syndicalist? Would you like to replace the nation with a kingdom? Or an empire? Or a theocracy? A nation, for all its strengths and all its weaknesses, is really a wonderful thing. You draw a circle, and you say, I don't care how you got in this circle, I don't care what your parents were, where you came from, the colour of your skin. The people inside this circle, we're a community. And the democratic nation state says whoever's inside that circle is an equal part in that society. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful way to organise the world. There's none better. I'm a proud, small n nationalist. And there's an importance in this debate as well. I spoke at the disabled group this morning, and I was doing an interview this afternoon. And in the interview, they're asking me about this. What's the philosophy of these things? Well, there's something very specific that I think is important. In the past, and I'm not a doctrinaire left. I don't have a lot of patience for. I don't like the shouting. I don't like the arm punching. Class warfare isn't really the thing that rings my bell. But yeah, social class used to be important. It used to be a key thing which was about how you analysed the reason that people were poor. But it's not really the primary reason anymore. What we have got is a global system of corporate power, largely backed up by international legal frameworks, the World Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund, EU, OECD, etc., etc., and a whole bunch of trade agreements. And that global power has done everything it can to make sure that we, as people, as humans, have no say, have no option. The rule says that you can do this and you can do this. The Scotch Whisky Association can rip the piss out of this country every time it wants just by saying, I'll take you to law, I'll take you to the court. My God, how many times does an industry utterly predicated on our heritage going to take us to the court to stop us expressing our democratic will? My God, I hate the Scotch Whisky Association. And that's as a whisky drinker and a keen whisky drinker. We've got this problem of global international legal frameworks. And one of the reasons why, all the way through this campaign, I keep saying to people, don't be ashamed of being a nationalist. Because a nationalist is a way of describing a democratic system, which to my mind is the only democratic option, the only option that we've got for counterbalancing international power. My guess is the 21st century, if it's going to be worth having, is going to be a battle between democracy and global corporate power. And the ability to make global corporate power serve people and not the other way around will be the victory we will win or we will lose. And this victory, I hope, is one which shows something very important. Because I went in the demo, 15,000, 20,000, whatever we're going to use. I went in the demo 2 weekends ago, and I deliberately started at the front. I didn't spend too long with Women for India, didn't really feel qualified, but I did stop to see my sister, who's very active. And I worked my way backwards through the National Collective. Oh, I love the National Collective. And back again through some of the local groups. I've got good friends in Edinburgh, North Leith, my own campaign was there and so on. And back a bit further, where I got to the radical indie people who I'm involved with. And then I went back a wee bit, and between them and the Greens were the Gaels for Independence, which I would have stayed with because they had the best pipers. But really, I couldn't sing along. they had these chants and they sounded great. I had no idea what it was. I moved my way back to the Greens when I walked down, and I looked behind me and there was another pile of people, and I could see, unsurprisingly, the socialists, not that organised, right at the back. And I'd gone to see them because I've got good friends there as well, but by this point enough. And I marched up, and the same thing came up everywhere, over and over again. You know how many people said to me, bloody English? Zero. The number of people to me that said, get them out of our country was absolutely zero. And the number of people said to me, my God, the chance of a fresh start, the chance of a new direction, the chance to do something different, that was 100%. Every single one of them. And I stood, one of the things that really bothers me, and I think that one day everyone involved will consider themselves cloaked in shame, is some of the strategies that Better Together have been using. I'm all for a contested debate, and I'm a pluralist, and I think it's important. But the way that they have narrated, they've curated a story that this is a nasty campaign, that it's all bile and bitterness, and that you better not join in and you better not voice an opinion, because if you do, you'll get your head shot off. It's an outright lie. It's an absolute outright lie. Because I've been in town halls like this all over the place. 12 people on a rainy Tuesday, 1,000 people at Radical Indie. And it's not nasty. It's not nasty at all. It's joyous and it's glorious, and I've loved every minute of it. And anyone who didn't understand that should have been in that march as we walked all the way around together. And the suggestion that it was anti-English just sits in my head as if, my God, were any of you there? I was walking down, and at the Greens, I maybe get even missed you. The Greens, there was an old couple, and they'd seen me in the telly, and I said, oh, I thought we were there. And he said, you know something? This is the best fun I've had in so long. He said, we've been marching for nearly 50 years, and in all that time, this is the first time I had something to march for. And look at the kids. They were, look at the kids. Look who's in here today. And it was very emotional. And I say this without any need to even, it didn't even occur to me to mention, as far as I know, they were English. The accent, an English accent, I didn't ask them. I didn't point at them, but an English person here. I just assumed it. The woman that runs our local campaign, two of the women that run our local campaign are English. It has got nothing to do with identity. Scotland's identity is fine. England's got a problem, but our identity is fine. In the 70s, you saw someone wearing a kilt at a wedding, you'd think they were making a point. By the 90s, if you see someone not wearing a kilt at a wedding, you assume they've got bad legs. Sorry, our identity's the problem. 1990, High Tories marched onto the field at Murrayfield and sung Flower of Scotland before we played the English. That was the moment when any question about Scotland's identity was over. And incidentally, I cannot resist saying this. Better Together, oh yes, the Scots are proudly Scottish and British. Proudly Scottish and British. Now I do a lot of stuff with polls, opinion polls, and I have a very, very, very mixed view of opinion polls that can tell you stuff. And I always say, I never believed that. I've never believed it from the get-go, just because I'm 40. I've never met a single person in this country who's described themselves as Scottish and British. Not once. So I was very sceptical about that. But hell, Better Together knows better than I do. And they kept saying it, we're all Scottish and British. Right up until the census came out and 62% of Scots said they were Scottish only. Did you see that? 62% of Scots said they were Scottish only. And Better Together said, no, I'm British. And did they make the front page of the Herald? Didn't even make the front page puff in the Herald. And when you got to the story, they ran Scotland less religious than everyone else. My God, one of the key, if one of the key claims of the Yes campaign had proved to be so incredibly fundamentally wrong, I think you would have seen it in the front page. Scotland's identity problem was resolved. We have no issue with that. We are comfortable voting the way we vote. We've got a parliament that's like the parliament we want it. And I'll say this, Labour or SNP, they're both closer to what, in Scottish Labour, for all my frustrations with them just now, they're still closer to what the people of Scotland want than London Labour or the Tories or anything that we've had in Britain. We've had no difficulty in voting for a parliament that we want. We have no difficulty in being Scottish anymore. This is something else. This is the start, the recognition that we can't go on like this anymore. We can't be stuck in a country which is run for a me-first attitude, which has left us all struggling. This is a movement, and it is. This is the most coherent and most serious movement that Britain has seen, challenging the economic orthodoxies that have brought poverty and misery right across Britain. We can make this different. We can win this, and I'm confident we can win this. And to anyone who's in here with political parties, I make one straight request to you. We need this message to be carried. We've got to stop being cautious. We never win a referendum. In fact, my professional background is I'm a political strategist. That's what I do. I worked as a political lobbyist for the most part of 20 years. I was a journalist and a political lobbyist for 20 years. And I'll just tell you point blank that if you want to get someone to back you in a 3-horse race, you can fidget your way into the middle. If you want someone to back you in a 2-horse race, you need to pull them to you because there's no middle. We cannot win this referendum on the basis of, don't worry, it'll all be fine. That's a very good reason to do nothing. We have to inspire people all the way through this referendum. We have to give them a very strong vision of what a different Scotland, and all of us first Scotland, would look like compared to the me first Britain. If we can do that, we can win. We can win this referendum. I'm absolutely confident. I look at social demographics, and I don't know how much canvassing people in here have done, and I don't know what areas, but I can tell you the working class areas in Glasgow that Rick has done serious canvassing on, and a number of other places, they're polling 70–80%. There's a very, very high desire among groups who don't usually vote to do this, and it's the wealthy at the top who've done well at Britain's Me, comparatively well at Britain's Me First. They aren't moving yet. We don't need all of them to move. We have to move the people who would really benefit from an independent Scotland, and the prize is enormous. We can rebuild the society, democratic, sharing, mutual, high social cohesion, decent social services, in fact more than decent social services, absolutely point blank, first-rate social services, using our natural resources for all of our collective wealth, with an economy which includes people and builds, and creates and manufactures and add value, not by exploiting people, but using their labour and their skills and their knowledge. And we can build that, and the prize is even bigger than that, because I don't know how many of you were in the march, but have you got any idea the extent to which the Catalans and the Basques and the Sardinians and the Corsicans and the Sicilians and the South Tyrolese and the Viennese and the Cornish and the Welsh and the Irish and many others are looking to us? We can set a model for this 21st century, a model of creating a democratic nation state with real democracy, where KPMG doesn't make the decisions, people do. A real democracy with a real economy, with a real society where people feel part of that society and feel connected to each other again. And we can build that model in contrast to globalised capitalism, which doesn't give a damn about any of us. We can do that, and we can set a model. We will be, people talk about a beacon for the light, a beacon for the world. More than that, we will be a leader for all these other places in Europe who want to do the same thing, create a decent country for decent people. If Scotland can lead that, I mean, genuinely, years to come, they'll look back and they'll say, yeah, in Enlightenment, Scotland invented everything. And then in the early 20th century, they pretty well invented everything again. And in the early 21st century, they invented an alternative to globalised capitalism and set a movement starting right across Europe that set people free from that. And that we did it together. Because this is the last thing that I want to see. Well, until you ask questions, this is the last thing that I want to see, which is, you maybe heard people chucking out the word populism, as if it means popular. It's got nothing to do with popular. Populism, if you're being serious, comes from a completely other linguistic root, which is populace. Populism is a method of controlling societies by dividing them into a big bit and a little bit, and setting the big bit against the little bit. The case study example, this always happens whenever the elite screws up. The case study example being Nazi Germany. You know, the First World War wasn't a brilliant idea. Everybody suffered, so hey, let's point at the Jews. Right now in Britain, yeah, globalised financial capitalism in the City of London was madness. It was pure mental, and it fell apart. And so the poor, it's those skiving poor, hate the poor, hate the poor. Well, I'll tell you something. I don't want ever to be involved in politics where one citizen sets himself against another citizen. I'm happy to fight corporations, and I'm happy to argue with whomever, but I'm not going to point one against another and say we're no together. And that's why I say again, all of us first. We have to build a movement and a meaning which can reconnect Scottish people who want to run a business, to build a business, with Scottish trade unionists who want businesses worth working in, with communities who want to have facilities and want to have a sense of cohesion and reality, with the public service workers who deliver, with the carers who keep things together without getting paid reward or recognition in this society. Bring us together. We've got to do this together. And that's why I'm urging everyone who's in a political party, carry this message, carry this out. The Jimmy Reid Foundation, although I encourage you to donate, I always forget to say that, we've got very, very little money. We can't run a full-blown national campaign. Our job is to win those who are running the parties to recognise what's happening under their feet, to recognise that this movement is asking not for independence, but independence for a fundamental